What I'm going to talk about today is emergency power, charging, water purification, and a few other ancillary topics that'll be woven in. So first of all, disposable batteries. This is where a lot of people start their preparations. And what are some of the problems with just storing disposable batteries? Yeah. And then when they're dead, you don't have any ability to recharge them. They have a shelf life. They often will leak. They're toxic. And you don't have the ability to use them in a device. For example, if you have AA, but you need AAA, or your neighbor has the wrong format. So there are much better options. And I am not necessarily talking about environmental impact, although, as I'll tell you in a moment, it's terribly impactful on the environment. But there are much better options, and I'm going to show you individually rechargeable batteries. I'm going to show you lithium-ion rechargeable batteries, and better yet, if you have USB built-in batteries, that's the fastest way to charge. But the great thing about rechargeable batteries as an alternative to the disposable ones is you can recharge them from a multitude of sources. Versus if you just store your batteries, it's like storing water without the ability to regenerate more water. So it's once and done. You want the ability to regenerate because you never know how long an emergency is going to last. So individually rechargeable batteries would be these pale blue earth batteries, and those have their own micro USB port on each battery. They come with a USB cord that splits one cord into four. So basically with one USB cord, you're charging all four at once. They have built-in indicators you can see when it goes from red to green. Another disadvantage of disposable batteries is you will constantly mix up which ones are fully charged, dead, somewhere in between. And it's bad for all kinds of reasons. You don't want to mix that in your device. You also don't want to have a pile that you either have to guess or you have to take a voltage tester and go each one. With rechargeable batteries, you don't need to even keep track. You can just throw them all in the charger, and when they're green, they're good. So if you do use these individual rechargeable batteries, those can replace basically all your batteries. They have AAA, AA, C, D, 9 volt. But if you want to stick with the conventional rechargeable, everybody's seen these, right? Mm-hmm. So typically they're nickel metal hydride. That has been a decent technology. Lithium is a much better technology now. It stores much more energy per battery. It's also a lot lighter, which if you're carrying everything on your back, either because you have to walk or you have to just load everything in the car, little ounces multiplied by dozens of devices, it makes a difference. And they don't have the memory effect. You can charge them whenever you want. They're bulletproof. I even installed lithium-ion batteries in the motorhome just because you really can't ruin them. They have their own circuitry in it to prevent overcharge and over-discharge. So lithium-ion batteries are the way to go. Either the conventional rechargeable or the individually rechargeable. The cool thing about either one is you can recharge them from USB. And why is USB a useful charging interface? Because you can recharge from solar. That's my main advantage with USB. And I brought a solar panel out there. If we have time, I'll show you how to hook up a solar panel to a power station, which will power your fridge, which will power, like for emergency, keeping your pharmaceutical drugs that need to be refrigerated. They'll keep your crucial foods refrigerated. And during the day, you have obviously great sunlight almost anywhere in San Diego. You can load up the solar panels. And think of the mnemonic ABC, always be charging. Always be charging, because you never know if there's going to be a significant storm the next few days. You never know if something is going to break in terms of your solar capability. So what you can do with pass-through charging is what modern portable power banks have, pass-through charging. And what that means is while you're charging the power bank, you can connect a ton of devices in using USB cords like this one that retracts, that has Lightning, micro USB, USB-C, and use all the available ports. Plug in everything that's rechargeable. If you've run out of devices to charge, great, charge your neighbors. And keep those topped off, because the sun is free, it's not going to charge that fast, and these small solar panel battery packs that some people get, like these. So better than nothing. And the ones that are just one panel, that's borderline useless. It's going to discharge far faster, it's going to charge. But the amount of solar generation capability is directly proportional to the size of the panels. So that's why on your roof, if you have solar at your house, those are huge panels, because solar capability is it's expanding, and in 10 years it's going to be probably 10 times what it is right now, but it is still relatively inefficient. And a panel that's rated for 160 watts, you'll be lucky if you get around 100 watts out of it. And it changes throughout the day, throughout the hour as the sun moves. So you want to overindulge on some key things. One is USB cables. More and more devices are USB, and somebody mentioned charging their phone. So you want to have a surplus of USB cables. You want to get more than you think you need and more quality than you think is necessary for the device. The cheaper cables are just that. They're designed to be built as cheaply as possible. They're going to fail you. And the better cables, I'll talk about in a moment, are if you have USB-C, which is the newest, fastest charging interface. Does anybody not know what USB-C looks like? And
that fits.
Okay, so that's why having a 3-in-1 cable is just one less thing to worry about, right? So
where'd you get that one?
This one you can get on Amazon. I'm happy to provide links after this. And
how do you know it's good quality or not, just because of price?
so look and see if it's certified for Lightning. So one of the cables has to go a certification. Lightning certification will tell you. And then when it comes to USB-C, the way to tell if it's a good quality USB-C cable is if it's a Thunderbolt cable. So I know the two kind of sound synonymous. You got Thunderbolt and Lightning, like they could have chose something different, but yeah.
Thunderbolt and Lightning?
Good question. Okay, so with a Lightning cable, that's the standard Apple phone and traditional iPad plug. It's exclusive to Apple. Nobody else can use it. And Thunderbolt is becoming a universal standard. So a Thunderbolt cable does everything a regular USB-C cable does, but it gives you a lot more in terms of quality. If it's rated for Thunderbolt, you know it's really good quality, and it can charge up to 100 watts. So the regular Lightning cable, you'd be lucky to get 18 watts. You're normally going to get about 12. Micro USB is about the same. So if you're not tracking everything I'm saying right now, I know it's a lot of advanced terms for some people, just think, get the highest quality cable, get the fastest charging cable you can get for your device, because there's always going to be a bottleneck. So when you're charging from solar, you're either not going to have enough solar to charge at the full rate. But let's say you're charging at the full rate that your device can handle. Then the bottleneck might be the charging cable. So that's also foreseeable, controllable, avoidable. Get a cable that's designed to charge much faster than you think. And I'm going to be talking about electrical power with extension cords. A lot of people have very thin extension cords, like you see almost during the holidays. There's all kinds of problems with those. And that is a major bottleneck when you're trying to plug in an appliance. First of all, it's a major safety hazard. There's thousands of fires every year in the country. And the last thing you need when you're going through a disaster and you got more than you can handle is to deal with a kitchen fire or the living room is up. There's so many things that are flammable in the modern house now. It's just one more thing to worry about if you're using a cheap extension cord or one that isn't grounded or one that is like 16 gauge. You should never use a 16 gauge extension cord. That's the thinnest one. So gauges, like wire gauges, the smaller the number, the bigger the wire. So there's an easy rule of thumb that I generally recommend for people. You don't have to calculate, which AWG wire gauge you need. You don't have to add up the wattages. You don't have to add up the voltages and everything. Just get the thickest, lowest gauge extension cord. So this one is one that I recommend. And instead of having the longest extension cord, get the thickest extension cord. You'll have that extra capability if you need it, but it's really no downside if you don't. It's a little bit more expensive, it weighs a little bit more, but you don't want to be taxing your extension cords when all the power is out. Think of all the things you're going to be trying to charge or trying to run. So with the correct heavy-duty extension cord, ideally one that has a built-in breaker because you want this to trip and turn off. I don't want to do it because I'm going to lose the recording, but it'll trip the breaker here, and then you just reset it. Oh, sorry. Yep. Sure. Okay, so there's a built-in circuit breaker here. And so actually this one's 14 gauge. I would recommend you go 12 gauge at ideally. 14 is the absolute minimum. All right. 12 gauge is good. 10 gauge is the thickest. If you want to really have the ability to run heavy appliances, then
that one a 10?
This one is 14. So the main thing is, and I'm going to get to that in a second, don't use the longest extension cord. Use the thickest you can. This is the thickest I have. It's okay for stuff like this, but I wouldn't trust an appliance on it. And I'll show you how to calculate, what the extension cord can handle, but that's, the bottom line up front. Use the shortest extension cord for the job and use the thickest. And have multiple extension cords. So if you have multiple appliances, you don't want them all running on the same extension cord. Have multiple. That also gives you redundancy because it's just Murphy's Law. You're going to have all kinds of failures of your devices, and that's why it's really good, what David said, to get to know your neighbors. If nothing else, it'll help you by helping them so they're not just coming to you for everything during an emergency. So, yeah, go ahead.
Question. Most of us have panels on the refrigerators and whatnot. I wouldn't know where to look for to plug in a refrigerator. Where do you look?
Do you have an integrated one, like a Sub-Zero?
Yes, a Sub-Zero.
Okay, so those are not easy. They're not intuitive, but usually at the top is where all the compressors are, the electrical. What some people do is they basically have the Sub-Zero plugged into like an extension cord that goes to their wall. So in the event of a power outage, you unplug the extension cord from the wall and then plug it into your generator. I think that can be dangerous. Sub-Zero doesn't recommend that you run your Sub-Zero on a generator. Instead, what is a lot easier for most people is to get a standalone fridge freezer, like in your garage. You probably don't need to keep everything frozen and refrigerated in an emergency. There are far more important things that need to survive, rather than your favorite chocolate milk. So you want, go ahead. Oh, sorry. Yeah, of course, it's exception, right? Yeah. Yeah. All right. So start with those first. Yeah. If there's any room for like the actual prescription drugs, and yeah. So start with the prescription drugs. Start with important meats, and if you can, throw them in the freezer. They'll freeze. They'll last a little bit longer. It gives you a cushion in case you totally are out of power at times. And another option is to get a 12-volt fridge freezer. So those are much smaller, much more efficient, and you can run that from your car. And your car is a fantastic generator. And the reason for that is you can connect this to the battery, and now you have pure sine wave AC. And yeah, like I heard Jack say, the gas is really a concern that people are going to be shocked to find when they have a gas generator that maybe they ran like 6 months ago and haven't run since. It's going to be extremely difficult to get that thing started because of the ethanol that's in the fuel. And if you're not regularly running your generator, the starter battery is going to be dead. So you're going to have to be cranking on that thing. The fuel storage for gasoline untreated, if you don't add a stabilizer, you're going to get about 3 to 6 months max. And if you add a stabilizer, you can extend that to a year, but don't go beyond that. But the problem with gas generators, in addition to that, is it's okay. There's so much ethanol in our fuel that it gums up the lines. You have to run them regularly, and that's why there's a better option, which I'll show you, and that's a portable power station. So back to USB real quick, in case you don't know what the USB lightning cable looks like. That's on the left, and that's a standard USB cable. The micro USB, everybody knows what that is, and that is definitely important to have because it's so universal. You have rechargeable headlamps. There's a rechargeable water sanitizer that I have that's micro USB, but that is slowly being phased out towards USB-C. And fortunately, finally, there's a universal charging standard. Europe has been pushing for that for years because we all have a desk drawer full of different USB cables, and it's always the cable you don't need at the time. So having USB-C is going to be fantastic.
Another question about
Sure.
rechargeable
Mhm,
batteries.
mhm.
I have a number of them plugged up, and they have been plugged up for like a couple of years, and then I started unplugging.
Mhm.
Should they all? I mean, is there a danger to just leaving them plugged?
So one of the problems with yes, there is. I mean, the lithium ion batteries are better, but they all recommend you don't leave them plugged in. It does shorten the life of the battery. It can create a hazard. The Samsung phones, they said part of that was people were just leaving them in. It does shorten the life of your phone, your device. Apple says don't leave it plugged in. You shouldn't even be leaving your phone on the charger all night because it's about 8 hours of unnecessary charging. It shortens the life of your battery, but you also don't want to be caught off guard when the stuff hits the fan. So I would maybe charge them, give them like a reinvigoration charge like once a year, whenever you can think of it. There are certain things that you should just add to your calendar that you should do on a routine basis. And one of them is do a walkthrough of your house for insurance. Walk through with your camera, record the valuable stuff. If you can get serial numbers, model numbers, it'll make your life so much better if there's a widespread disaster and you have to work with the adjuster to show, yeah, I did own this, just I don't have the receipts for it, but take my word for it. You can just do a standard walkthrough every year with your camera, super easy. And I've done that for people. I have a 360 camera where you just walk through the house, and then when you play the video, you can rotate the camera. So if anybody wants that, I live with you guys here, so I'm happy to help. Next, the fastest charging adapters. So this is something that a lot of people don't think about. When you're charging a USB device through one of these wall chargers, it's extremely inefficient. So all these batteries charge through direct current, through DC. And the problem with these is it's taking AC and then it's converting that to DC. And if you are using a power station, it's even more wasteful, a generator or a power station to plug one of these in, because now the power station has a giant battery in it, if it's like that electric one I have out there, or even a gas generator with an inverter. So then you're wasting energy to go from DC inside the generator to AC, so you can plug this in, and then converting it back to DC. So it's a very unnecessary step. It's just what we're all used to. What you can do instead is find a power station that has the car adapter in it, and then it's just DC to DC. So when you can charge from your car, it's extremely efficient. And now these go up to 100 watts. That's as fast as you can charge any device. Most devices, like most phones, you're not going to even be able to safely charge them past 60 watts, but they have self-regulating circuitry in them. You're not going to overload it. The new MacBook Pro, this computer it just sucks power so quickly. It'll last about an hour on a battery. It does charge at 100 watts. And if you're getting a power station, a portable power station to travel with, the FAA says that 100 watt hours is the biggest one you can travel with. That's the rule. There are exceptions. You can tell them. What's that?
What's that look like?
Well,
One of those
I
batteries.
can. Yeah, Dave, can you grab the thing out there? It's it's the small battery that's in a case. Just grab like both the small cases on the table. You'll see. So they're not that big, and they're getting more efficiently packaged, but 100 watt hours is about like 28,000 milliamp hours, and your phone and your battery is about 4,000 to 6,000 milliamp hours. So you figure that's how many charges you're going to get. So if you're going to go bigger than that, you're probably not going to be able to fly with it. So yeah, there it is. So the reason I'm talking about this, we shouldn't just buy these things for that zombie apocalypse that never comes. But once we get all the supplies, we hope it does. But no, it's for travel. It's for convenience. It's if you have people at your house and you don't want to be dependent on everybody have access to an outlet. You just want to have music outside. You want to have even the ability to cook when you're away from the confines of your outlets. You should be using your gear more than just the occasional zombie apocalypse. You want to figure out what it takes to make it work. You want to figure out what its limitations are. You want to figure out how to get help while you can get help because the internet and power is out. So this is one device that I carry everywhere I travel, and this is called the Goal Zero Sherpa 100. And this has 2 USB-C outlets, and you can charge the device from this, you can discharge from this. It has 2 USB-A, it has an AC outlet, which is for very small devices like a laptop or something, not a fridge. Wireless charging, and you can see it has organizers for cables. So you can never really have too many of devices like these just scattered around the house, like one in your car, a couple in your house. You could even just keep one in your suitcase just for travel.
That's a portable battery station. Is that what?
Yep.
What does something like that cost?
$300. And
Amazon?
Yep. It's made by Goal Zero, and it has a 22-volt solar input port right here. So what you would do is
It's made by
Goal Zero. Yep. So when you have your solar panel, you take the leads from your solar panel. It's basically as simple as this. Does anybody have any portable solar panels? Is anybody familiar with solar at all? No? Because this is a question I get asked about a lot. People are...
Can you take it off my roof?
You can, it just won't ever work again. But there actually is a way to draw power from your solar panels depending on if you have the microinverters installed outside your house. I'll show you. So most of these portable solar panels, they have 2 male and female plugs that come off it. You just connect it to that, and then you just find the right size of your adapter chip and then plug this in. So then during the day, you're charging this from solar. You just put this outside, and remember what I said about pass-through charging. So you're soaking up as much of this free energy as you can at the fastest charging rate the device will handle, while you have all your individual devices plugged in. Your cell phone, your kid's phone, your neighbor's phone, your wife's phone, your flashlight. You should have USB rechargeable lighting, because at almost every house I go to, I do a look at $5 bet. Like, I bet I can find a flashlight that is completely dead. Whenever, yeah, exactly. It's like ornaments. Yeah. So USB is the way to go for lighting. And obviously I'm a little partial towards headlamps, since Santa Luz EPC has their own headlamp. But you don't want to take away half of your usable hands by having a flashlight when it's dark out. It could be wet. You want your hands available, for obvious reasons. So that is one way that you would have pretty much unlimited recharging capability during an emergency, as long as the sun still comes out for at least a few hours a day. And that's where the advantage of having a solar panel that's oversized would not be the bottleneck at that stage. The next stage would be the next bottleneck would be, how fast can this thing charge? So that's why I prefer to charge from the 12 volt, and you can use your car. You can, it uses a very small amount of energy from your car battery, so you don't have to run your engine if you're just charging USB devices. But the point is, you want to charge as fast as you can, especially when you're using solar, right? Just think of the bottlenecks. If you can charge a device at 100 watts versus 18 watts, then you can get that thing off the charger, put the next one on, and take advantage. Yeah, go ahead.
Many of the late model cars now have inverters built in.
Yes.
But I have no idea what capacity they have. Are they actually big enough to do you some good?
It depends. So if you look at the plug itself, it will usually tell you that it's 120 VAC, volt, and then it should tell you how many watts right below that. So they're not going to be that large, and it's going to be enough. Or if you have a device that you cannot charge through USB, I mean, I see this all the time. Like, people use their inverter and they plug in their power, they'd be better off using USB. But if it is a device that has to be charged through AC, it can't be a large one. You probably can charge a laptop, but another reason to get a laptop that has a USB-C connection rather than the legacy wall outlet is you can bypass that whole AC to DC conversion. you can plug in the USB-C cable right to that USB outlet, because you're wasting energy in the car. Yes, right? It's like parasitic draw. So, and another advantage to using DC, so this port here, that is where you would plug in this adapter on your power station, right? That's the cigarette lighter port. I mean, I don't know what they call it now because nobody uses it to light their cigarette, but that was a thing years ago. So you plug it in there on your power station, and that is where you draw the power from. Another advantage is these things charge extremely fast using the 12-volt charging cable. So if you're not at home where you don't have your AC outlet, you just fire up your car. You might not even have to run it. Just keep in mind, where the battery level is on your car. And if it doesn't start, if you've drained it to dead, then does anybody have one of those portable jump starters? Okay, Kirk does.
Yes, we do.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so you can jump your own car, and then now you have possibly several hours more of gasoline in your car that you can leave it idling and run numerous appliances. So again, the inverter is, I think, a better option than a standalone gas generator, because you don't have to cycle the fuel out for your gas generator. You don't have to do periodic maintenance. There's no oil filter. There's no fuel filter that you have to maintain separately on your generator. Your car runs. The car has a few, hopefully it'll at least have a half full tank. You've heard the generic adage, like, don't ever let it get below half tank. Consider your gas tank half the size that it actually is. Half now means empty, so don't let it get below that. Not to mention, gas is only going to be more expensive tomorrow than it is today, so if for no other reason, fill it up. But you can't just store gas for your generator and think it's going to be ready for you to use unless you've been adding that fuel additive. Diesel lasts longer than gas, but ethanol is in diesel too. You have to stabilize diesel. Diesel will last longer, but that is your first resort. It's extremely small. You can take it with you. So I'm going to do a quick comparison of what I have out there. Did you want me to back up?
Propane.
Oh, propane, yep. So propane lasts a very long time. Propane is a great thing to have, but there are more efficient uses for it. So most people are going to use a propane for cooking. And then they might, if they have a generator that can run on propane, they might use it for that. They might also use it for heating. So heating using propane should be a last resort. It's really inefficient. You're going to heat most of the ambient air rather than the immediate space that you need it for. If you need it for cooking, that's understandable. If you have no gas for cooking, you have no electricity, but there's still other options besides that. So as a last resort, it's fine. I would use that for cooking. And if you need it for your generator, just keep in mind that storing propane is like storing disposable batteries. So every gallon that you use is just 1 gallon less that you have. And you don't know how long the emergency is going to last. So propane is a wise thing to store. And it really doesn't require any upkeep. You can get a larger propane tank than most people have. They're rated in pounds. So you can get a 33-gallon tank, which is kind of the perfect compromise. The 100-gallon is too big. 20-gallon is not really big enough. So propane is a nice thing to have around the house. And if you're going to store fuel, propane is a better idea than just storing gasoline. So gas generators are less expensive to purchase. They can run most appliances. They have a very long run time, but they're more expensive to maintain, more complicated, and the fuel is going to be hard to find during an emergency. So think about all the threats that are going to await you when you go out to refill your gas can. It's going to be potential madness. It's going to be lawlessness. It's going to be chaos. And who knows how far the panic will have evolved and society will have devolved. You don't want to be going away from your family, away from the safe confines of your house unless you have to. Plus, the gas station might not even have backup power to pump the gas. The trucks that deliver the gas might not be able to access the gas stations or might not even be running. And the fuel lines are basically putting you in danger. You're sitting duck, you're waiting, and you don't know how desperate people could get. So I don't want to sound like this is a likely probability. It's very unlikely, but there are crazy things that have happened to all of us that we never would have thought would be possible prior to the year 2020. So as much as we want to pretend these things won't ever happen because they have never happened, we've had to recalibrate a lot of our expectations. And if there are ways to control what's within your control, meaning having an ability to power just the same as you would from a generator, but instead something that you can recharge from your own backyard, these are things that are within your ability to control. Most things in life are not within your ability to control, but it only makes sense to seize the things that are. So with, yeah, go ahead.
It was $300 for the portable, the one you put out in the yard.
No. So this is $300, this portable one, and then they go up from there. So the typical gas generators, is that what you're asking about? Or okay, so the gas generators, they're usually around $500 to $700 for what most people get. Obviously, you can go Generac, you can get full sine wave, you can get even 10,000 watt capability. But what most people get from Costco and Harbor Freight are real cheap. They have a really cheap starter battery. I don't want to mention Laura's name, but yeah, she has that generator that she absolutely hates. So we tried starting it last week. I think she told me I could mention this, but like I was just cranking on it for like 30 minutes. I mean, it's a hell of a workout if that's the goal, but like. So just make sure you alternate hands, so you know, yeah. But it's, yeah, but they're really cheaply made for most people that just want it for that one-off emergency, and they just keep it in the garage. And they don't have what's called a pure sine wave inverter. If you just get something based on price and you don't care about the quality or the contents of it, pure sine wave is what you need. That's what you have in your house. That's what your appliances are designed to operate on. But it's a lot cheaper for these manufacturers to do a modified sine wave, and your appliances are not designed to run on that. So that's why if you're going to run your Sub-Zero, you don't want to risk destroying that thing during an emergency. Does anybody know how hard it is to get parts for your appliances during just normal time now?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so imagine how much worse it's going to be. So you don't want to risk it. So it's even better to just power that thing down, have a standalone fridge freezer in your garage, or a 12 volt, or just a deep freezer where, most of the meats that are in your fridge, toss them in the deep freezer. Now you're buying yourself extra time. The tenderness might not be optimal, but you got more important things to worry about. And New Orleans, which, they just keep being hammered. They had Hurricane Ida last year, and they lost power, they lost fuel, so they couldn't keep their food fresh. It was spoiling, and then they couldn't cook it. So both those things are foreseeable and preventable. Now with these portable power stations, you're going to spend usually a lot more money to buy it, but you amortize it every time you aren't filling it up with $5 or $6 a gallon gas. And that is probably the least of your worries. The cost, everything is going to skyrocket in cost when you can't get something. It's ridiculous how much some of these items that were $50 are going for $150, sometimes $200 now. This water, if we have time, I'm gonna also talk. This is why I like talking about one topic per session, because there's so many different areas to cover just on one topic. But with water, in case I don't have time to mention this, if you're wondering what this is or what this is the only bottled water that I store. And the reason is those typical, 16.9 ounce, the Aquafina, the standard water bottles, those are not designed for long-term storage. Even the 1 gallon blocks of water, those will fail you. And as bad as it is to have a water block that you need for an emergency that is empty, it's also going to probably leak because the plastic degrades. They're made thinner now than ever for environmental reasons. They're not designed to last. So this is a 20-year shelf life water. They're expensive. They're hard to get right now, but the brand is Purify, and it's sealed. It's extra thick plastic, and they're certified for their purity of it. Made in USA, and it was bottled in 2020. It'll last until 2040. So that's if you have to, bug out. If you have to go somewhere, you want to keep those in your car. Keep one in your bug out bag. But similar to the principle.
When you say
yes,
expensive, what do you mean by expensive?
Oh man, I don't even want to look and see what it is today, but they're, when I bought it, it was $6 each. I assume they're more than that now.
You bought it where?
Amazon. You can also buy it directly from Purify, but yeah, go ahead.
If we have a bottled water in the house,
Yeah.
in a gallon or 5 gallon, is that safe?
Good question. So the 1 gallon, like the blocks, no, but the 5 gallon ones that are sealed, those are good. Those will probably last you close to 20 years. Keep them out of sunlight, keep them off the ground because they can actually leach chemicals from the concrete. Keep them raised, but get a storage crate for them, and those are extremely durable. Yeah.
Okay, so that makes me feel good.
Yes, I was gonna mention that after I mentioned the Berkey. So there's a difference between storing water for home use and storing and transporting water when you need to leave the house. I mean, everything kind of breaks down to, are you able and safe to stay at your house, or are you going to need to leave? You always want both options available, and your best option is always to stay at your house if that is an option. So you can't necessarily carry a bunch of 5 gallon jugs. You can carry a few in your car, but time is going to be of the essence. You are going to be struggling to gather all the things that you're trying to think of at the moment. You're going to forget more things than you bring. So while you're thinking of this, is why we are in the emergency preparedness community, why we try to give people advice. You want to start thinking now of, what will I need and where will I keep it? So have a bag, test it. I don't know if any of you guys go camping, but if you go traveling, if you go to a hotel, see if you can live out of one bag. And that will be an instant calibration of, oh my gosh, like I forgot all of my clothes. Like, you need something to remind you of, like, okay, I didn't need like all these Pez dispensers. Like I didn't need, So that's the quickest way to not only see what you're going to need, but also how much water you're going to need. So try to just live off the water that you're bringing for your family. That'll be a quick way for you to get an estimation, a ballpark of how much each person consumes per day. If you have a dog, don't forget about your pet. And you also need it for things other than drinking, for hygiene, for cleaning things. So you want to have kits ready-made. And I provide instructions if you want to build your own. I also build these for people who want it just once and done.
Best type of food to store?
My personal favorite is Mountain House Pantry. And the reason for that, there's several reasons actually. So Mountain House Pantry has the longest shelf life of any ration that I've seen. So the best by date on this is March 2050. So this one is, don't worry, this isn't what we're serving today, but beef stroganoff with noodles. And it's,
You need water for that.
you do.
You have to have clean water.
Absolutely, yep. It is absolutely delicious when you have nothing else to eat. So canning, if done properly, will last an extremely long time as well, as long as it's kept in the appropriate climate. The modern canning technology is extremely reliable, and I know David can probably talk for a long time about canning and the benefits of that, and it's extremely durable. But I like this because it's extremely lightweight. You're not carrying the water with you. You can usually find a way to purify water at the site. It's totally sealed. Nothing's getting into that inadvertently. You don't need a can opener, which is going to be the demise of most people who have their cans and no can opener. And they have, it's not just beef stroganoff and noodles. There's multiple, vegetarian, vegan flavors. There's breakfast, there's lunch, dinner. Another thing is, even though it's a luxury, have multiple flavors. If you have to eat the same food day and day and day after, it really does wear on your psyche. And I've had to eat MREs for 2 weeks at a time, and so that's a meal ready to eat. Yeah, and that, that's how the military punishes their members. But they're terrible. But they're like indestructible, and they have a self-heating ration in them, which it doesn't make the beef patty taste any more like a beef patty. But it's what a lot of preppers rely on. But the shelf life on an MRE is, they say it's about 5 years. You might be able to get a bit longer out of it, but they're not designed for long-term storage. But you can get a pretty good deal on the ones that are about to expire, if that's your prerogative. But, so like, I'll eat the Mountain House, but my wife will eat the MREs. Yeah.
Suppose you're going into the end of your rations and you run into cans that have expired dates. How should you think about that?
Yeah, a lot of those are best by dates on the cans, but that doesn't mean they have to be eaten by that day. And you know, if you have a way to boil it, that's an additional way to add precaution to it. But I remember hearing about cans that were over 100 years old. It was on a ship that sank, and the food inside was, they tested it, it was still edible. I mean, obviously, most people don't keep their cans at the bottom of the ocean, but having it away from heat is crucial. So to answer your question, most of those are best by dates, not like expiration dates per se. And the thicker the can, the better. Obviously, you know, if it's in metal, I keep canned food, of course, as a backup, because the protein, the iron, you just want a variety. And another advantage of storing things like that is barter. So it doesn't matter how much cash you have if there's nothing to buy. If people need food and the stores are already wiped out, you need something to barter with because you bought the cheapest extension cords and cheapest USB cords on Amazon. Now they're all dead, but you have 5 bags of beef stroganoff, so you can make it work. Yeah. So the Berkey filter, I'm skipping around because I know I'm not gonna have time to cover everything, but this is kind of the once and done water filter, water purifier. It's a water filter, of course, like most of these things are. And this is not just for home use, but it's like a Russian doll setup. You can drain the water, fold it in itself, and then it carries in this. And that will filter unspeakable things. Yeah.
Toilet to tap.
Berkey, Berkey.
Which is where we're going.
Yeah. So you can. It's one of the only water. Yeah, it's one of the only water filters that actually is rated to filter pool water because it will remove the chlorine, and it's so heavy duty that you can bring this to the creek, to the river. There's several creeks that go through San Luis. I don't know if anybody was walking the past few days after the rains, but those creeks were flowing, and you could take this, you scoop up the water, or you get a vessel, pour it in there, and then there's 2 carbon filters in there, and it uses gravity to filter the water. And why is that important? Why is gravity important to use? Yes, no power. You can use it anywhere. So you could bring, and like I said, having something this big versus storing the equivalent amount of water that size, you're not even going to have 5 gallons. That's going to give you at least 6,000 gallons, and it's one of the most important things you can have. About 6,000 gallons. It depends on the hardness of the water. Depends on if you're exclusively filling it with your own pee or not, but don't recommend making your coffee that way in the morning. And yeah,
How long does it take to filter that much water?
it'll take about an hour. And I guess there's downsides to everything, right? There's as I learned in the military, there's a solution to every problem, and there's a problem to every solution. So, and there's a lot more problems than solutions in most parts of the military. So, with this, it's as I speak of problems, my GoPro just died, so just right on cue. Thanks, GoPro. And then with that, you do have to periodically maintain it. So, you have to prime the filter. You have to, when you get it, but, we've been using it for about 6 months, haven't had to do anything on it. It's been real. I mean, your average swimming pool is going to have 15 to 30,000 gallons. And I'm sorry to repeat some of the things that, Kirk and Coco sat through in the last presentation, but it's also a great source if you have a pool, if you want to take the risk of having a pool firefighting pump. If you want to stay and fight, it's up to you. You might die either way, but there are the pool firefighting pumps that you can actually use to spray a retardant on your house, as well as use the water to fight a fire or create a defensible space or perimeter. So a swimming pool is not just a novelty. It's also, as a last resort, if you can't escape, if the fire is encroaching, you really could just throw your family in there and duck under as the fire passes over. It's a last resort, not a first resort. So
Does it matter if there's saltwater in the pool?
it does. It does matter for the purposes of this. Yeah, thank you for asking that. So don't use this for a saltwater pool. Find something else. And like David alluded to, you can get water out of most appliances. I have a dehumidifier at my house just for the purpose of manufacturing water. It will pull the moisture out of the water, the opposite of a humidifier. Yeah, yes, exactly. Thank you. Out of the air. And it will condense the water from the moisture in the air, and it puts it into a tank that you can then purify and drink. So there's multiple ways to get emergency water. You can even run your air conditioner. There's that drip line, which you have to filter the water. Do not drink that. But you could use that. You could filter it. You could also use it for, cleaning off surfaces if you need with a bleach disinfectant and such. But there are multiple sources of almost limitless water, whether you have electricity or not. So next time you're walking around the area, just try to find the areas where there is water on the golf course, where the land goes down. It usually collects. Where the trees are dense and dark green, there's usually moisture there. Watch birds in the morning and at night. They tend to know. They also would like to see, how do I actually hook up my refrigerator to my generator? How do I run my car as an inverter? You can see here, it's just connected to the battery, and then that extension cord just goes into the house. The other issue, I know it sounds like I have a major hatred of gas generators. It's just, there's so many problems with them that are easily cured with a portable power station. Not a bad idea to have a gas generator as a backup, but the portable power stations can give you one additional key benefit. You can't bring a gas generator in your house. And the longer the extension cord, the more the voltage drop, the bigger the hazard, and the harder your motor has to work. Think about it as like an N95 mask versus just regular cloth mask. Like, you have to breathe a lot harder. And it's similar to that. When you have a long extension cord, your appliance has to work harder to get that same amount of power. Otherwise, it can really reduce the lifespan of that motor. And you double that with the fact that most of these generators are modified sine wave. Not something you want to lose during an emergency, your ability to
Have
keep.
the Yeti here?
I have two, not the Yeti like the one Laura has, but if we have time for, I don't know, 2 minutes, I can show you the one I did bring, as well as the solar panel if everybody wants to see it, and couldn't not bring the solar powered sausage cooker.
Oh.
Oh, I have it. It was cooking. Yeah.
You have sausage.
Yes. Right. What did you bring though? Barter. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. You can have a sausage. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the rooftop solar is, if you have, so most of us have rooftop solar, but it isn't as simple as just using the panels, because you have to have inverters installed. And the way that would look and operate is, outside, you'll know if you have that setup where you'll have a little, everybody know what a GFI or GFCI outlet is?
Yes.
It's like okay, good. Well, impressive crowd. So for those who don't, or said that they did know and actually don't, it's it's basically a wet application outlet. It has the test and reset. So that's usually code mandated for any wet application by your sink, by your bathroom, outside. So if you have one or two of those outside, then you can shunt the power directly from the solar panels into that GFCI outlet. And the way to do that is disconnect it from the grid. You have to disconnect it from the grid. And the reason for that, in case it's not obvious, is when the power does go back on and our line workers are on the lines trying to get it working, you're going to throw them right off the line. If you're backfeeding it into them, they think that line is dead and they're not taking the appropriate precautions. I mean, their job is dangerous enough, they'll make it worse for them. So what you would do is you'd look and see if there's a DC disconnect. That DC disconnect is your solar panel. Think, DC, that's always solar, it's always battery. You're not going to, I'll leave it at that. Otherwise, I think I'll make it more complicated and lose you if I didn't already. For the DC, so there's a AC disconnect. That's the one you have to disconnect. You need to keep the DC going and disconnect the AC. And if you look on the screen, it'll show you that there's a little like detachment from the grid. Usually these Sun Powers, the Sunny Boys, they have a little icon. You want to make sure that it gives you some kind of indication that you're not backfeeding to the grid. And these are designed so well now that it won't even let you backfeed even if you wanted to. But it probably goes without saying, don't ever plug your generator into your house. Don't backfeed that way. That's actually against the law, I think. And California even says that you're supposed to notify SDGE if you have a generator for emergency use. It's on their website. You're supposed to notify them for obvious reasons. So I'm not going to spend much more time. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, innovative. I mean, you can share it, but you can also, if you have proper extension cords, you can route the power. Like in this will be a perfect application for you. You keep one or two of these things in the center, keep as many solar panels on it as you can, and then you're routing power, as you have available to those who need it.
Yeah.
And then anybody who has a generator, you can charge this thing. And it's a beast. You'll see, it has a pull handle like a suitcase. It charges in 2 hours. It's the fastest charging one I could find. And normally, like these power banks, those charge 4 or 6 hours.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So as the power does come on and off, you leave that thing plugged in, or if someone has a generator, they're willing to run for 2 hours. Now you've topped it off. Now you can continue to power to augment what you've been able to generate through solar. So what people have done, to answer your question, for like whole home, is they've gotten Generac, like built-in whole home power stations. The Tesla Powerwall is great too. The downside of that is you can't take it with you. But if you do get that, just make sure you can use it during an emergency when there's no power. Because ironically, some of these whole home battery backups actually require power to operate. If you get a transfer switch, you can bypass that. But I think it's out of an abundance of caution. They don't want people backfeeding power into the grid unexpectedly. So, I mean, it all helps. I mean, it's overwhelming to think, you just have to go incremental, one step at a time, almost like a flow chart. Like if this, then that. And then, already touched on these, so I'm going to skip over the slide, just summarize bad, 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 right? Don't adapt an outlet that doesn't have a grounding port with one of these. That creates a fake ground. Yes. Bad. Yeah. Shame. Yes. Yeah. So the adapter, the only way you can make that work is if you are using that little prong down there and grounding it out, but most people aren't doing that. They're just trying to find a way to make the plug work where the outlet is so old it doesn't have that grounding plug. So, yeah.
These homes have it.
All these should have it. Yeah, that's been code for decades. Yeah, so if you don't have the ground, then you'll become the ground. And yeah, so. And then the problem with this one, too thin, 16 gauge, it's just like make believe. And then power strip without surge. A lot of people have these, but they're just power strips. There's no surge protection in it. So it's just like an extension cord. You want something that has a joule rating on the package, right? And it has the circuit breaker, it'll trip. And then this, you see the problem? No ground. People use that for holiday lights. Don't use that for anything other than, silly holiday decorations that you can afford to melt down and explode. And the easiest option is to just get the thickest extension cord rather than go through these calculations where you add up the wattage, you divide by the volts, then you round down, and then you get the gauge. If you're, an engineer, you might find that fun, but like, just get the thickest, just get a fat cord. And I made up a little mnemonic. I hope this helps. TSG. So for the extension cords, go ahead. Just think thickest, shortest, grounded. So something like this would be great. I like this better than like the DeWalt extension cords that don't have an additional breaker on them. It's just added convenient, and it coils up. It's off the ground too. But again, don't use anything longer than you need for the job. And this is a quick breakdown. You can see the problem is you can have, so with a 10 gauge extension cord, you can carry up to 20 amps, 2400 watts max, with all the way down to the worst. A 16 gauge, 100-foot extension cord, the max you can safely transport within that cord is half of that, 1200 watts. So what a lot of people are gonna do is just, if it fits, I'm gonna plug it in. Like if I have an outlet, like make it work, plug it in. And if there's no breaker on it, something's gonna give, all right? So it's either gonna be the cord overheats and catches fire or melts, or the device is gonna have electrical issues. But you can see why people have so many problems with extension cords, because they just overload it and they use too thin of an extension cord without even knowing it, and too long of one. This is what I have outside, and I have 2 solar panels hooked up. It's very, I'll show you outside how that actually looks, but it allows you to just connect multiple panels together. So when you connect panels together, there's a difference between connecting them in parallel and connecting them series. With parallel, you're just bumping up the wattage. And again, it's all about recognizing what the bottlenecks are, recognizing what the weak points are. And most of the time, you're not taking advantage of the full charging rate of your device, of your power station. That device out there can handle up to 1600 watts of solar, over 100 volts. So it's going to be impossible for you to overload it, because even if you do, these things are so well engineered now that it has a trigger. It'll just let you know you've exceeded the voltage limits. And the one that I have, the EcoFlow Delta Pro, it has an app. So if there is internet working, if you just want to keep it outside, it's like a wireless meat thermometer. You can see when it's done charging.